What's up guys, my name is Dean, aka the Blue Crusader, and welcome back to the channel. Minecraft is a huge conglomerate of tons of different features, items, and a mix of experiences. This game is about as expansive as one gets, and there's so many things packed into one title. However, Minecraft has been around for years at this point, and along the way, not everything has made its way into the game in its final stages of each update. No, there's things the developers either chose to leave out or didn't fully implement into the game. From files still inside the game that are unused, to items and mobs that are in the game but only spawned in through commands. These are the top 10 unreleased Minecraft updates. Basically cut content or content that was never used or not fully implemented into the game. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Number 10, unreleased mobs. So this is going to be a pretty big section. There's been a lot of mobs added to the game files that still hide in there till today, and also some that were removed or not fully implemented. I'll be covering a few of the more lesser known ones, as well as some of them that most people will be familiar with. The first mob though that I'll cover is the Giant, a mob added all the way back in the INDEV days before Minecraft Alpha. Giants are basically giant zombies that have no AI behaviour, meaning they basically don't walk or have anything to do when they spawn. The Giants also can only spawn below a light level above 11 and less than 8, which is physically impossible, so they cannot naturally occur in the vanilla games world. Now the only way to summon Giants is through server plugins or the /summon giant command. The only natural giant spawn was back in the 2020 April Fool's snapshot a few months ago, where it sometimes spawned in custom dimensions. The next mob is the Monster, aka the Human. These mobs were known as monsters in the game's code, which was the code to spawn them in game via commands. I initially discovered this one by accident when I spawned it on my old Minecraft server. It was basically a mob version of Steve, which would originally spawn in random pre-classic world places, although for the longest part before they got removed in the beta, they could only be manually spawned via commands and similar ways. I always spawned this mob just to troll other players because they'd think it was Herobrine because it had no name, but it was just Steve with a mind of its own. There was also the Killer Bunny, which is a strange variant of rabbits that are hostile to both players and tamed wolves. It has white fur with red eyes, and it will leap at any player that's within a 16 block radius to attack. It moves more like a spider though than a rabbit, and when it's attacked it will temporarily retreat before continuing to attack again. The only way to spawn this mob is by using a special summon command when cheats are enabled. Next up is the Zombie Horse. Some will probably be familiar with this one because they were added back in 1.6.1 along with both the normal and skeletal horse types. You can spawn them in via the creative mode with these special spawn eggs, although you can't actually find them naturally spawning in any vanilla survival mode as they haven't been used for anything yet at this point. But since you can access them in creative mode, pretty much everyone is aware of this mob. And another one that everyone's seen is the Illusioner mob. It's an illager type mob added early back in 1.12 before the Village and Pillage update even came. They are hostile to villagers, wandering traders, iron golems and players as long as they're in a 12 block range, and they use spells and a bow to attack. It can summon duplicates of itself or make itself invisible and even blind the player. It looks similar to a Vindicator, and it can only be spawned with a summon command as they currently have no implementation into the raid system. The last mobs though to cover are some of the first mobs which were added way back in the INDEV days. These mobs all had little to no animations and basically glided or just had simple movement and very limited loot drops. These were some of the very first experimental mobs that weren't just passive creatures. You may wonder why there is Steve and why he even has a name and what's the point. Well, the original Steve in the INDEV edition was very much different. He was far more blocky and looked completely dissimilar to how he does now. Most of these mobs were removed though in the 0.31 INDEV update and have not been available since 2009 in the game since then, although you can still play all of the old game versions to this day. It included Steve, a character called Rana, who looked like some kind of Animal Crossing character, Black Steve, who had different clothes on and looked very different to Steve but shared the same name, and also Beast Boy, which was probably some kind of reference based on the DC Teen Titans character, Beast Boy, which probably would have caused some kind of copyright issues later down the line, so it makes sense that they'd remove this one. Regardless though, these mobs had little sounds, limited animations, and although they looked really cool, they were quickly scrapped, but they're still super interesting to take a look at again. Number 9, Uncraftable Potion. There's a potion type in the game that's been there since version 1.9 in a snapshot that has no effect, and it's completely unobtainable in survival mode without the use of any kind of cheats. There's a normal version called Uncraftable Potion, along with the Uncraftable Splash Potion, Lingering Potion, and an Uncraftable Tipped Arrow. You can only give yourself these items using a give command with the potion type included. These were most likely made just as a form of tests for the later implementation of potions, or just coded before so they could improve the general potion system. Number 8, Mountain Edge Biome. The first biome that's not being used still till this day is the Mountain Edge Biome, which is very similar to the Jungle Edge sub-biome which is available in the game, although this specific one is a sub-biome that only generates at the edge of any type of mountain biome. The biome has dirt and grass, spruce and oak trees, and sometimes it tends to snow. It has a temperature of 0.2, and the mobs that spawn here are sheep, pigs, cows and wolves. I'm sure later that the alpacas would probably spawn here as well. The purpose of this biome was to be used to smoothen the transition from other types of biomes when connecting to the mountain biome and entering it. It's pretty close to the appearance of a standard taiga biome, although there are not many oak trees here. Due to it being the edge, the terrain is of course not as high or steep as the normal mountains, although this was weaned out of the game after 1.7.2 and it doesn't spawn naturally, but there are still ways to find it or use it via the buffet world options in Java Edition, or through the use of some kind of Bedrock add-ons. Number 7, Deep Warm Ocean Biome. The Deep Warm Ocean Biome is the second biome that's unused in the game and doesn't generate naturally. It's very similar to the standard Warm Ocean, although hence its name, it's actually also twice as deep as these. Because of them being much deeper and being a sub-biome of deep oceans, there's the possibility for underwater monuments to generate too, letting you gain access to both guardian mob types, sponges and prismarine. A lot of mobs can spawn in this biome though. It has a temperature of 0.1, although some other pages claim it to be 0.5. You can see tropical fish, pufferfish and guardians at the monuments, and obviously there's the same spawn chances as normal deep oceans for mobs like dolphins to spawn. There's underwater ruins, and you might even find some deep shipwrecks as well as some sand, kelp and seagrass, and the standard other underwater blocks and landmarks. Although it's similar to the warm ocean biomes, this one has no kinds of sea pickles or coral reefs, so it's a little bit different. The only way to generate this world type is via using the super flat world or the correct buffet type world options on Java Edition, but for Bedrock you'll have to use add-ons just like with the previous biome I mentioned. Number 6, Villager Speech Bubbles. An image file discovered in the game's files that was added with a villager.png file inside the Minecraft jar just as the trading system was implemented. The villager speech bubble shows an example trade of raw chicken being exchanged for another raw chicken piece, both having the old texture. The most likely explanation though for this was covered by the main developer from Mojang called Jeb. He said that we did some experiments with thought bubbles but it didn't look good, so in the end, after I'd been the lead on Minecraft for a year, we just decided to use the interface instead. It's been partially overwritten though since then by selection arrows, although basically this was just an early test of the trading system and it was replaced by the trading window screen that we now see today, and we can see the proof of this from the quote from the developer. Number 5, Vindicator, Witch and Evoker Hoods. One interesting little thing is another unused texture which is slightly hidden and that little of us know about. This was news to me when I was doing research, and that is that Vindicators, Evokers and Witches, which are basically all magic mobs, have an unused texture of a hood in the game. The Witch hood can be seen in one of the old 1.14 snapshots, which is version 18W50A, whereas the Evoker hood is shown in an image on the article on the Minecraft website called Meet the Evoker. It was also a thing before the 1.14 Village and Pillage update that villagers also had unused hood textures too. I think witches with hoods would be super cool, perhaps being a random thing that would add more variation to some of the mobs, although it didn't exactly look great in the version that they had made from the example pictures, because the witches who have hoods also have hats on top of them and it just doesn't look right. I think it's best that it was unused or scrapped, but I think the concept would have been cool if it was done in a different way. Number 4, skeleton melee attacks. Skeletons have always used bows and been a ranged mob. They're unlike most other mobs in the game who will use melee if they don't have a weapon equipped, or spawn usually with no weapon in some circumstances. But skeletons will always spawn equipped with a bow, so they don't really have the same implementation or same option of melee combat as a lot of the other mobs in the game do. Well, since Minecraft 1.13 though, skeletons were made more similar to zombies, so they can now sink in water, and they also have the option to use melee attacks when the player gets too close to them. If you spawned a skeleton with a sword, it would be weird, but it could actually still use it like a normal weapon. For an example, wither skeletons can use bows too if you spawn them with one, but the arrows will always remain on fire, even if there's no enchantments on them or even if they've not touched lava. Although this has changed since then, skeleton melee attacks were never a thing in the past, and they just don't perform in the same way as a lot of the other mobs do. Number 3, purple arrows. There was a version of Minecraft called the Survival Test, which was theoretically an early version, which was a test segment of the survival game mode way back in the classic version of its development in 2009. In this version of the game, the skeletons shot purple arrows, which behaved the same as normal arrows, but they could not be equipped or picked up by the player. The normal arrows texture that contained this unique purple arrow was not used, but since then, in later versions, it was removed and replaced. It has never been used since then in the survival test, and after some of the future updates, originally it was replaced and removed. Back in Java 1.9, the original arrow texture, which contained the purple arrow appearance along with the vanilla arrow, was replaced with a newer arrow texture, meaning the original one that had the purple arrow inside it was lost and completely unused after that situation. Number 2, Ruby. Back in the early experiments with the villager trading system, a little bit similar to how they did the speech bubbles that we covered before, sometime in 2012, the developer Jeb was testing out this new system in which he shared a screenshot showing some of the progress of it, and there seemed to be what appeared to be a ruby on the picture, which would later turn into emeralds that we know today a little bit further down the line. The original texture of this ruby is still in a ruby.png file in the game's files, but it's never actually been used since then, so it's unclear if they will ever implement it as an ore or for any other use in the future. They decided to replace these rubies with emeralds though in the end, because one of the technical directors called Dinnerbone was colorblind and had problems distinguishing the ruby from the redstone, and he thought the problem would also be similar for other people. Ruby ore and ruby references from other files have since been removed, although they're still referenced in the Minecraft Earth app as a currency, but they don't share the original texture as Minecraft had. I think it'd be really cool to finally add rubies as a separate ore or separate item with a different use, but currently there's no use for it in the game. Number 1, Nether Reactor. For number 1, we'll be covering a structure which is exclusive to the Bedrock and PE editions, so if you're familiar with PE or Bedrock, you may know of the Nether Reactor structure. We're mainly referencing the Bedrock edition here, although it's been in both versions, the Pocket edition and BE version, which is also Windows 10. The Nether Reactor was exclusive to Bedrock, where you could spawn large numbers of hard to obtain items. It was uncraftable back in alpha and replaced with the Nether, and also could be made in some of the old worlds via inventory editors. It was crafted out of a combination of gold blocks, cobblestone and a Nether Reactor core block. The only way to obtain the reactor core is through add-ons, mods or inventory editors at this point. There's not even a way through commands or creative mode to obtain this item still, because it's hidden from the game. Although its functionality was removed back in the Pocket Edition's alpha and the Bedrock Edition's alpha, the block does still exist as I stated, and it drops the ingredients unless you mine it with Silk Touch. The original blocks of gold and cobblestone 2 though have since been replaced with new blocks which are called glowing obsidian. These emit a light level 12 light source and they drop a normal obsidian block when they're mined, although these blocks no longer generate in BE and Pocket Edition. And that concludes the top 10 unused content in Minecraft and some of the unreleased updates or features that were never implemented. If you enjoyed it, give it a like, and if you know about some other unimplemented or unreleased content from Minecraft, please share it below in the comments and let me know what your favourite unreleased update is from this video. If you want to see more top 10 Minecraft videos, subscribe with the notifications on. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.